everybody, it's Lisa Hanson. Welcome to my living room. I decided to sit on my couch today because Liz isn't with us. She is sick. She doesn't have a voice. We were going to try to do it, but it just wasn't going to happen with her today. So I miss her. So that's kind of why we changed it up a little bit, because I just can't do it without her. I didn't want to sit at our table together without her there. So welcome to the Why So Curious podcast. My name's Lisa, and my co-host Liz says hello, and she wishes that she could be here with you. But just as a little bit of a reminder as to what is the Why So Curious podcast, we want to help you feed your curiosity by listening to a podcast that is going to look under every rock. We are going to peel back every layer, anything that we can do to pull back the curtain so that we can get to the truth for the things that, what's going to happen next? Why are things happening the way that they are? All those great things that we talk about. And so we are in season 2, and this is episode 3, and this is What the F Wednesdays. And typically on What the F Wednesday is we will discuss a story that you just kind of go, what the fried chicken? How did that happen? And why did it end up the way that it ended up? And stories that kind of make us a little bit nuts because we just don't feel like truth is going to matter. We don't feel like justice is going to be served. But the goal is to have the best revenge, which is for you to be able to thrive instead of maybe never finding justice the way that our culture, our world sees justice. What you want to learn how to do is not let whether or not the outcome is good to where that person goes to jail or the bad guy, gets what's coming towards him. That stuff doesn't always happen. And so today what we want to talk about, though, is, again, we're in a season where we're focusing on relationships. And both Liz and I have shared our relationship stories with you, and there's lots more stories to tell. Today, what I really wanted to focus on more than anything is relationship goals. I think it's crazy that, again, why don't we learn how to set goals? Like, goal setting is key into getting where we want to go. And it's like, it's not the first thing that we teach kids. It's not the first thing that we learn. We are told, hey, what are your goals? Set some goals. It's like, okay, what do I do with that? I set some goals, but it's like, if we don't have a plan as to how to achieve those goals, then we're basically being set up to fail. And I think when it comes to relationships, a lot of us have never really stopped and thought about relationship goals. And again, let's go back just a little bit to how powerful words are. Liz and I did the friendship cake with you a few episodes ago because the connotation behind relationships is it's always based on something romantic. When in reality, the majority of the relationships that we're in have nothing to do with romance. It has everything to do with different levels of intimacy. And so we started, and again, intimacy is another word. We're a lot of people. I was just in high school talking to a bunch of kids, and when I asked them to define intimacy, they got really quiet, they got really shy, and this kid raised his hand at the beginning. I was like, doesn't it have to do with something that has to do with sex? No, right? If we don't understand the definition of a word, then we don't understand what the implications are when it comes to developing relationships. So just a quick reminder, the definition of intimacy is to be known, is to know, or to be known. And so there's different levels of intimacy. Some of us know each other really well. Some of us don't know each other at all, which is why we have to start with understanding the levels of intimacy. So we already did that. If you didn't hear that lesson yet or session yet, go back to, I can't remember the title of it right now, but I'll have Jonathan put it up on the bottom of the screen for you, to where if you want to go watch the friendship cake, then I think that's the title of it actually. The friendship cake, that is where you're going to learn the levels of intimacy. Sophie is disappointed because there's all this stuff and she can't get to me, but she's right here on the floor. You might hear her during our time together. And I just dropped my glasses, so here we go. All right, everybody. So what I wanted to share with you guys today is, like I mentioned, relationship goals. And again, really determining, there are scientists, there are relationship experts out there. So all of this stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you is just not stuff that I pulled out of my own head. I've done tons and tons of research because relationships are my passion, and I want to see relationships work because relationships are part of everything that we do. And if we don't understand how they function, then again, we're just being set up to fail. So if we take a quick look at just how relationships work, it might help us, figure a little bit of things out. Because the question that I have is, do relationships make you crazy, or are you crazy about relationships? Because I am crazy about relationships. Some of them do make me crazy, but I'm more excited about the fact that we get to have this conversation and we get to learn something together. Again, you get to learn from my mistakes, but you also get to learn from my successes. And again, the goal is the best revenge. I got a lot of really great, healthy relationships. I'm not stuck in those unhealthy, toxic relationships, because now I know what to do with the relationships that I'm in so that I can be a really good friend. I can be a really good listener, so that I can be in relationships that build me up instead of tear me down. This is life. And we're all doing this together. So I wanted to play a quick video from you, and it comes from the Power Over Predators student video series that we offer to schools, to parents, to anybody who just wants to learn something new. And again, because I'm passionate about teaching kids what healthy relationships look like, because they're all in relationship with each other on campus, on teams, wherever they're at, and hopefully at home with their family members. It's important. Kids are dying to learn how relationships work so that they can avoid toxic ones. And so what we teach kids is that the relationships that you choose can determine whether or not you achieve your goals. So think about that. And a lot of us don't even realize that we get to choose what relationships that we want to be in. But what type of relationships are you choosing? If you choose a relationship with somebody that's not healthy, then it can literally lead you down a path where you never intended to go. And if you don't know how to choose the right relationships, you've never been taught how to choose the right relationships, that could be why relationships make you absolutely crazy. And you just feel like, I'm done. I don't even know how to do this anymore. I don't want to be in relationships anymore. And maybe you just need somebody to support you a little bit better in that. Because again, had I known a lot, before the fact, maybe I wouldn't have chosen to get into the abusive, toxic relationships that I just found myself in because I didn't know any better. And then finally, you just need some skills, maybe you've got some nunchuck skills, I don't know, but you need relationship skills, right? So we all need this. This is just a part of who we are and part of what life is. So I'm going to skip real quickly right here to this video so that you can hear a story from a high school student who shared with me just kind of a sad story about a relationship that they got in. So hopefully I got it set to the right spot. Here we go.
I dated this girl from school and everything started out great. We had a ton in common and I really liked hanging out with her. Things started to get weird when we started sending nudes and she got really possessive over me. After a while, there was nothing I could do or say to try to make her happy. I loved her, but she constantly cut me down, and I began to believe that I was the loser that she said I was. I started doing drugs and drinking to numb myself. I finally broke up with her, and it was brutal. I got so depressed that I just wanted to give up on life. Even though I made mistakes, going through that taught me a lot about myself. Breaking up was crazy hard, but when I got through that, I could see the full truth. I am not the bad person she accused me of being, and I do not have to be in a relationship with someone who is toxic and disrespectful. I am way better off having good friends that are a positive influence in my life.
Okay, so I think that's super powerful where he ended up landing is I'm way better off having a lot of good friends than a toxic relationship with somebody that I was romantically involved in. And so that's one of those stories where you go, kind of, what the fried chicken? How did that happen? How did that relationship implode? How did that relationship, the drama in that relationship get so escalated to where this person turns to drug and alcohol to numb and also considering suicide? Because if we are not aware of the signs of a toxic relationship, or if we never set goals before we go into a relationship, we find ourselves in this horrible situation where we love this person, but this person is abusive and we don't know how to get out of it. And the thought of breaking up or the thought of separating, whether it's a friend or somebody you're romantically involved in, that rejection or that fear or the pain of the breakup feels bigger than what the reality is. And the reality is you're going to be better off without that abusive relationship. Just think about it. It's almost like poison. It's like, would you be better off continuing to eat something that you didn't know had poison in it? And then you realize that it's the poison that's making you sick. So you break up with it. Even if it's a really great food, maybe it's your favorite food, but it's killing you. So you stop. You have to walk away. I know that sounds like common sense and a no-brainer, and I don't mean to sound patronizing if that's how it's coming across, just because literally it's like we overthink everything. And so if you're in a toxic relationship, think about the word toxicity. Toxic means something that is harmful. And so if you know the signs of a toxic relationship and you've set some goals for a healthy relationship that you want to be in, then you're going to avoid the toxic things. But a lot of us don't even know what signs to look for, because if you remember, if we're focusing on getting all the way to those fulfilling relationships right away, that just doesn't work, because those types of relationships take time to build, like the friendship cake. And so what I want to talk to you guys about real quick are just a few things. Today's not going to be very long, but I wanted to go over some really important characteristics that have been put together by researchers for you to start setting goals for the relationships that you want to be in. And again, remembering that levels of intimacy and the cake, you get to determine how these relationships are going to develop. So a relationship goal that you have, if you want to be in a good relationship with somebody, one of the first things that you want to look for is trust. So again, since we know that trust is not something that happens overnight, trust takes time. So you've got to get to know that person for trust to develop. And so trust means I can trust you, you can trust me, and it just doesn't happen overnight. Another characteristic is time. A good relationship requires time. Again, it's not microwave. You don't get to put it in the microwave, hope it's done in 3 minutes, and now you've got this really great relationship. So it's an investment. So we have to spend time with each other for one of those healthy relationships, one of those safe places that we get to be in a relationship that's going to be fulfilling and satisfying. Respect. Man, I tell you what, it's a whole nother podcast, but I do know what I've heard from men is they would rather know that they're being respected than being loved. There's a psychological thing that goes on with all of that, but I tell you what, men feel loved when they are treated with respect. And I think we all want to be treated with respect. I'm not saying this is one way or the other, but I do know that for men, in the research that's been done, they feel loved when they are treated with respect. And man, isn't it easy to immediately disrespect somebody with a slight word, with a look, with a comment that can really feel disrespectful to somebody, and then it shakes the foundation of that relationship. Okay, so another thing that you want to look for in a relationship is patience. Again, it goes along with being time, needing time to trust, needing time for respect. Patience is also really important, because you just hope that somebody's going to be patient with you like you're going to be patient with them, because I screw up a lot. And I'm just so thankful that my husband is patient with me. I'm thankful that my kids are patient with me. And as long as the next characteristic you want to be aware of is communication, good communication. If we are not communicating, then things just kind of start to fall apart. And I'm not talking about the, hey, how was your day? I'm talking about, tell me about something that happened today that was awesome. Tell me about something that happened today that made you feel horrible. I'm talking about intentional conversation, intentional communication, because communication is key. Because tell you what, my husband can't read my mind. I can't read his mind. Same thing is true with my kids. Same thing is true with my friends. Communication is one of the key things. Another thing that's just seems like a no-brainer, but is really helpful is having common interests. The things that you like to do, it's really helpful if the other person likes to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to be the same and like the same. In fact, my husband and I are called, we've been known to be called, he is the firefighter, I'm the arsonist. So I go around setting fires, he goes around putting them out, but we're a really good combination with each other. We have similar interests in the music that we like. We have similar interests in the types of movies that we like to watch, the books we like to read, things like that. And so we find those common interests as to where our relationship grows and develops. Same thing's true with my kids, but each one of us are different. Each one of us have different things that we like, especially like movies, music, any activity, you know. It's just a part of the relationship, though, is that you spend time doing the things that the other likes to do so that you can continue to grow that relationship. I want to say, though, that there's one thing that whenever I ask an audience, whether it's adults or whether it's kids, because a lot of times people will pull all these out. Because I ask the question, what are some key characteristics to a relationship? And people will say these things: respect, good communication, time, things like that. We know this inherently, which is amazing. And I can ask a group of fifth graders, and these kids, they will give these key characteristics that the experts have put out there if you want to develop a good relationship. So it's amazing to me that we already know this, but the problem is we don't know how to achieve it because we've not set those goals, and we find ourselves in these random relationships where we continue to get hurt. But every time, without fail, the one thing that everybody forgets to say is a key characteristic in a good relationship is unconditional love. How can we forget love? How do we forget that that is one of the most important things? And not just love. And I'm not talking about love as a feeling, because love is not a feeling. Love is an action. So it's not how we feel. And it's a sacrificial word. When I say sacrifice, when you love somebody, sometimes you do something. Maybe you see that, listen to that music that you don't like because you love that person, and you're going to, if it's where you're going to connect, you're going to listen to that music with them. That sounds kind of blah, but I'm serious. When it comes to your kids, sometimes the only way you're going to connect to them is by hey, show me a new song that you love by this artist that you like and tell me about them, whatever, right? So it's really important that we are taking time to love each other well. And when I say unconditional, I don't want anybody to hear that what I'm saying is anything goes. I'm not saying that you can do whatever you want and get away with it, and I'm required to love you unconditionally. What I'm saying is nothing that you do, even if I agree with it or disagree with it, let's just say if one of my kids or if my husband, whatever, broke the law, the love that I have for them is not going to change. It doesn't mean that their action of breaking the law, that I love that and it's okay and it's because of unconditional love that I'm just going to forgive them. What that means is I love you, period. It doesn't mean I love you because. And we talked about this a little bit in one of our sessions that we did with the kids in Sweet Sounds of Saturday, where if somebody's saying, I love you because you make me a better person, that sounds really sweet. That sounds really endearing. But guess how much pressure that's putting on you now? You love me because, or you just love me? So unconditional love is I love you, period. So, but here's the thing that is the most important characteristic for a relationship. It is the ultimate goal if you want to be in a sustaining relationship that's good for you, is to know the person. And again, that's why we started about building that cake, building that friendship cake, the foundation being the lowest level of intimacy with people that are just strangers in your world. You don't know them, but you get to know them through time, through communication, through those common interests. But the ultimate thing is to where you know them. Now, if you take the time to get to know somebody, which is super important, what you're going to discover is maybe you have some very serious conflicts that aren't going to work. But like for me, if I go back to just the fact that I got married because I was pregnant to the first person that I was married to, I didn't know this person. And a lot of us find ourselves in those situations where we were having sex before I knew this person. I mean, I knew who they were, obviously, but I didn't know. I didn't know that we had completely different views on things. I didn't know that we didn't share the same interests. I didn't know that we had basically nothing in common, but now we're having a child. And again, there's no shame here. I'm not pointing the spotlight on anybody. I didn't know. I didn't have any goals. I just found myself trying to figure relationships out, and now I'm having a baby. And I was a baby myself. And so that's why if we give each other the opportunity to understand that it is totally appropriate for you to set goals for the relationships that you're going to be in, that helps you get to know somebody before you end up in a situation where you feel like you have to compromise because you're stuck and you don't know what to do. And so I think it's just super important because we do things so backwards. And then, like, if you go back to the story that you just I just told of that young man, where he told his story actually, where they were instantly attracted to each other, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? They were instantly attracted to each other, but they didn't take time to get to know each other before they started participating. They didn't have any boundaries. They didn't have any goals. They just went off of how they were feeling. And feelings are awesome, but feelings aren't always where we want to base our really good decisions on. And so if it comes down to where you're just learning how to set relationship goals, you can take a step back. And then you don't feel so much pressure to, how do I know if this relationship's going to work or not? You don't. And that's the whole mystery of it. And that's, to feed your curiosity as to why relationships fall apart. None of us really have these skills that we've been applying or have been taught these skills that we need to apply. So again, setting goals for those relationships is totally empowering. It's really helpful. And then you're going to be able to avoid those toxic relationships. So let's talk about the signs of a toxic relationship. Because if we don't, maybe we don't know the signs that we're looking for. And so, like, this is I'm just going to go through this list real quickly with you. And then I'm going to tell you a little story after that, so you'll see how this works. But this is a simple relationship test to recognize the signs of an unhealthy relationship. These are not goals that we set. This is not what we're looking for, but a lot of us find ourselves in unhealthy relationships. So we need to know the signs of a toxic relationship or an unhealthy relationship. So here we go. Are you in a relationship with someone who? Okay, think about that. Am I in a relationship with somebody who? And here's the thing. The only way you fail this test is if you're not honest with yourself. So as you're asking yourself these questions, if you feel anything coming up and you're saying yes to some of these, awesome. You're being honest with yourself. And then there's a little bit of hope afterwards. Okay, so don't get stuck. So are you in a relationship with someone who makes you feel guilty if you don't do or give them what they want? Are you in a relationship with somebody who doesn't respect what's important to you? Are you in a relationship with somebody who puts you down and says mean things to you? Do they get jealous if you want to go hang out with your friends? Do they ask you to do something that you might regret? I mean, we can talk about this with little kids. We can talk about this with adults. Do they beg you for money or some of the things that you have? Oh, I just really love that, and I would really like it if you would let me have that. Or begging you for things that you have, your possessions, and then making you feel bad if you don't give them that. Are you in a relationship with somebody who blames you for the things that they do? So I wouldn't have screamed at you if you hadn't made me so mad. I wouldn't have called you that, but you just make me so mad that I wanted to call you that. Do you see where I'm going here? I mean, I've even heard, if you hadn't made me mad, I wouldn't have hit you. So that's what that looks like. Blaming you for something they do. That's a very manipulative way that predators get away with a lot. And last but not least, do you have a relationship with somebody who apologizes to you, but then never changes their behavior? So an apology is one thing, but an apology is also not a feeling. It is an action word. I'm sorry would indicate I feel bad for what I did, but when you apologize, it's an action word. You stop doing what you say that you're sorry for doing. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who's like, I'm sorry I did that, I won't do it again, and then it happens again, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that's their feelings talking. That's not the action talking. So apologizing is an action word. It means you stop doing what you did so that you don't have to say you're sorry anymore. So those are just some key indicators, and let me tell you why that's important. I was watching my son, who was 15 at the time, really start to struggle in a relationship that he was in with this girl. And, they're 15, but honestly, I knew that he loved her. I knew that he was really into this relationship with her. But I also started to watch him kind of really feel kind of cruddy about himself all the time. He just wasn't the happy person that he was. And, one day I'm working on my stuff and I'm preparing for a class, and I just said, hey, how's things going with so-and-so? And he's just like, I don't know. It's just, I don't even know what to do. And I said, okay, can I just show you these questions? And again, you don't have to tell me the answers. You don't have to, but again, I told him the only way you fail the test is if you're not honest with yourself. And so he read through those questions that I just gave to you, and he just slumped, and he goes, oh my gosh, Mom, every single one of them but 2. So, and I'm like, okay, so now Mama's going to teach you some breakup skills because he recognized that he was in a toxic relationship. And again, if you're ingesting something toxic, you aren't going to feel good. You're going to feel lousy. So he realized that he needed to get out of that relationship. And so again, we're being really general here. We are talking, we're going through this stuff really fast, but one of the most amazing tools that you can use if you need to get out of an abusive relationship at work with a boss, get out of an abusive relationship with a friend that you have. Maybe it's people that are online, because people are super abusive online. Get out of a relationship with, even it could be somebody that's in your family where you recognize that this relationship is toxic. You have an opportunity to set some boundaries, and you have the opportunity to get out of that relationship if you need to. But how do you do that? So I want to teach you something that's called the I statements. And here's why this is super important. When you practice I statements, you are helping and setting and maintaining your boundaries. But it's a really effective communication technique when you use an I statement, because instead of in the conversation of saying, you're a jerk, you're abusive, you hit me, you did that, it's all true. But what you can only imagine is that it's going to cause a bigger explosion and a greater conflict. So if you practice the I statements, then it keeps you in control of the conversation. Is it comfortable? Heck no. But the whole goal is for you to be in control of the conversation and for you to have the power to set and maintain your boundaries and your goals that you have. So let me just give you 4 quick ones. I don't deserve to be cheated on. That's pretty simple, right? Do you deserve to be? Nobody deserves to be cheated on. But a lot of us, I got cheated on so many times, and I kept hearing, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it again. I'm a jerk. I was weak, blah, blah, blah. But if I just believed the truth about myself and I stepped into that, I don't deserve to be cheated on, boom. You are in control of that conversation. And the only answer that you want to hear is, you're right. Not even an I'm sorry. It's, you're right. So people, you might have a lot of work to do on the relationships that you're in, and this is scary. Don't tell, I'm not here to tell you that this is easy. I'm here to give you the skills that you need to stay in control of the relationships, to stay in control of your boundaries. It's not for you to be a control freak. It's just for you to understand how to maintain those relationships and deciding if you need to get out of them. Okay, here's another one. I don't deserve to be talked down to. How simple is that? Nobody deserves to be talked down to. And if you're going to say, you're such a jerk, you're always so mean, you're always talking, you're disrespectful. Again, that's true, but that person's defenses are coming up and it's gonna be a fight. So if you just say, I don't deserve to be talked down to, Again, the only response, the best response, the response if there's hope in this relationship to go anywhere is, you're right. You don't deserve to be talked down to. Okay? Again, I am not responsible for your happiness. Ooh, and when I say that one, think about it as parents sometimes. Like we could be like manipulating our kids, not knowingly, but because I'm guilty of this. I'm like, okay, it would make me so happy if you would just do the dishes for me today. I just put my happiness on my kids' willingness to do the dishes. So now they're responsible for my happiness. What I needed to say is, I need you to do the dishes today because that would be super helpful. I need your help. I statements, right? And it's not manipulative. Nobody's having to read between the lines, and then nobody is feeling responsible for my happiness. I am responsible for my happiness. Okay, so we have to be clear when we are communicating those I statements. What's true about you helps so much in communication. And then let's talk about that kiddo earlier sharing the story. And again, I can even share the story about my son, where I just remember he came to me one day and he was so upset and he said, Mom, I feel so much regret and guilt for all those girls that I had crushes on before I met so-and-so. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, well, it really hurts her to know that I liked other people before I liked her. Whew. Okay, so I had to take a deep breath because at that point, I'm just like, get rid of this girl. You know, she is putting so much on you that how are you supposed to know that you're going to meet her, and that why is she putting the pressure on you that you should have waited for her when you're 15 years old, but he felt this pressure because she was jealous of him hanging out with his friends. If he didn't text her back within 15 seconds, where are you? Who are you with? Are you thinking about those other girls before me? It was so toxic and abusive that when he finally did use those I statements, and so when he did decide to break up with her, this is how it went. And I'm like, okay, I'm right here with you. If you need my help, I'll help you. And he's like, no, Mom, I got this. He closes the door. I can hear him on the phone. She's already screaming at him. And, and then like he couldn't get a word in. So he opens the door and he holds up the phone and he's like, Mom, I can't do this. And I'm like, okay, repeat after me. I do not deserve to be talked to this way. And he does it. And then repeat after me. I deserve to have other friends. And then she's still screaming at him. He never heard the you're right. And then I just said, dude, just say, I am breaking up with you. I am breaking up with you. Hangs up the phone, throws it, smashes against the wall. Yeah, we had to get a new phone. But that's the whole point, is that he stayed in control of the conversation, even though the results weren't what he hoped for, that things were going to land and in a place where they could move on. But that relationship went all the way down to the lowest level of intimacy. And if I were to argue, I would say that they've always been at the lowest level of intimacy because they just really didn't know each other. Everything that they were doing was based on how they feel. And it was one of those probably more selfish relationships than it was a giving relationship. And I just want to, we're going to wrap this up really quickly with the idea of how much pressure we put on each other, that I don't think any of us really recognize that we're doing it intentionally, because I would say that most of us aren't trying to do this intentionally. But I will never forget, I think it's one of the most famous lines that we've ever heard, and it made all of the girls' hearts melt, but it is probably one of the worst lines that you could ever use with somebody when you want to go into a relationship with them. And it was the "you complete me" on Jerry Maguire, when Tom Cruise says, "You complete me." And again, the mic drops and everybody's in tears and they smooch. And yeah, do you know what kind of pressure he just put on her in that relationship? We have got to be okay with who we are. We've got to be okay in our identity. We've got to know that we are okay, because if we're determining somebody else's ability to complete us, they will always let us down, and you will suck the life out of that relationship, because you are expecting that person to be able to complete you when you need to be a complete person before you are going to get into a relationship with somebody else. Friendships are a part of who we are. They're a part of how we thrive. If they're not good for us, they're going to bring us down. If we don't have the skills, we're going to continue to just play a guessing game. So I hope today was a little bit of inspiration for you to set some of those goals, Determine how far you want to go in a relationship with an individual. And again, cut yourself a lot of slack. Learning from other people's mistakes, but their successes is so much more fun. So I'll tell you one more story, a success story. After all the relationships that I'd been in, after all of the completely crumbled cakes, just a big chaotic disaster on the floor, I got myself into a situation where I was in a good place with my parents, I was in a good place with my kids, and I was in a good place with myself. I had developed an understanding that I have value. I had to become a whole individual, not dependent on my kids to make me happy, not dependent on my parents to help me out. I had to get to where I was a whole, complete person. That's when I gave myself permission to start maybe consider dating again. And I just happened to meet this individual introduced by a mutual friend. Before we went anywhere in that relationship, I was very clear and communicated very clearly what my boundaries were. And it wasn't like some controlling thing. I'm just like, hey, I just want to share some things with you. So before we even take any steps further into getting to know each other, because this might not be something you're interested in. And because again, he can't read my mind, and it's not fair for me to make sure that that he can figure it out. I got to be honest with him. I got to be open with him. I had enough abuse, and I had enough, again, remember, I started off relationships with sexual stuff, thinking that that's where relationships were. When I learned how relationships started, I wanted to start a relationship from the bottom up and build it up. And so I shared all that stuff with him. And then I shared, but here's the kicker. Because I've said this before, sex is like the icing on the cake, but it has nothing to do with how you build the cake. It's the afterthought. A lot of people can have a lot of sex, but that doesn't mean they have a relationship with anybody, right? And so the key was for me is because my relationship mattered, and because I mattered, and because he mattered, I just said, I just need you to know, and we'll see what you think about this, but I just need you to know that I don't even want to kiss another guy until my wedding day. So how you feel about that? And it was really quiet for a little bit. The awkward silence of how's this guy going to respond? Because I set that boundary and I had to communicate that to him. I need to know that I matter more than anything else. All the other stuff that's really fun that if things go well, we get to do for the rest of our lives if we want to. And again, I just kind of tilted my head up and I kind of looked at him and I'm like, and he goes, "You're so worth it." Man, that is a person who, was willing to start the friendship cake and willing to set aside all the other things, because Lord have mercy, we were both very attracted to each other the minute that we saw each other, the minute that we met each other. But having set aside how we felt and not acting on those feelings, we took the time to build a friendship cake so that no matter what, the fact that he's in the military and he's gone for a long time, sometimes our cake, our friendship is so solid and so strong that everything else is just the sweet stuff that goes up on top. But where we have our foundation is in our relationship. And I just hope for that for you. And again, some of you might be sitting here going, okay, I have some work to do in the relationships that I'm in. Sweet. That's you being honest with yourself. That's you seeing that. And I might have opened up a Pandora's box where you're recognizing that you might need some help. And again, help is available to you. I'm here. Liz and I are here. We're sharing our stories. We're being vulnerable with you. But you can go to the website too. You can go to Power Over Predators, where again, you can see those signs. You can listen to some more videos. You can understand and maybe gain some more tools. And if you really do just need to get help, we have some get help places for you to go on our website. So thanks for spending time with me in my living room this morning. And I can't believe how mellow Sophie was. She didn't even make a peep today. But again, Relationships 101, because I don't want relationships to make you crazy. I want you to be crazy about relationships. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.